أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the previous discussion, we spoke about the importance of the holy month of Ramadan and how we need to try and make sure that we're able to make the most of it. One of the things that is, of course, very highly recommended in this month that we know of is the recitation of the Holy Quran. Now, alhamdulillah, many of us in this month attempt to finish the whole Quran by trying to recite one part of it every night or every day in this month, and thus being able to finish 30 parts in the 30 days of the holy month. Whilst recitation of the Holy Quran has so many benefits, many times we hear about this complaint that we're not able to form a deeper bond with the Holy Quran. In fact, not only do we hear this complaint from the people around us or from the ulama, or sometimes we feel it ourselves, rather when we look at our hadith, we see that this complaint has come from the imams themselves. So for example, in one of the famous hadiths of Imam Ali, he quotes from the Holy Prophet where he says, "Sayati ala nas," there will come a time when the people, "Sayati ala nas zamanun," there will come a time where the people, "La yabqa min al-Quran," nothing will remain from the Quran, "illa rasmuhu," except its formalities, "wa min al-Islam illa ismuhu," and nothing will remain of Islam except its name. And we see this today, that many people are Muslim by name, but in their actions, they're not able to follow what Islam truly wants them to do. But the first part of the hadith is what I want us to focus upon, where the Imam is complaining, the Holy Prophet is complaining and saying that there will come a time when for the people nothing will remain of the Quran except its formalities. And unfortunately, we live in a time and age when we see this very, very clearly around us, that the Holy Quran is only opened, unfortunately, in the holy month of Ramadan, or in certain functions, be it weddings or funerals. Apart from that, the Quran isn't given much importance to. Whereas when we think about the Quran itself and what it's supposed to be and what it's supposed to mean in our lives, it's something that should baffle us, that the Holy Quran isn't given more importance in our lives. The Quran, as we know it to be, is supposed to be our guide, something that takes us towards Allah. If something is a guide, then it's supposed to be ever present in our lives, and we're supposed to be making use of it so that we can reach our destination. It doesn't make sense that somebody wants to get somewhere where he doesn't know anything about that place, but then doesn't end up using a map or a guide to get there. Or if he has the map in front of him, he doesn't make use of it. All of this said though, often we hear this question asked, that we understand that the Quran is a guide and that it needs to have a very prominent place in our lives. However, we're not able to connect to it. And there's a few reasons for this. When you think about it, we feel like we don't see anything special in it. We know that the Quran is supposed to be special, but when we open the ayat of the Quran and we recite it, we come across verses and we read the translation even sometimes, we're not able to connect to it. And it seems like maybe it's something that was for the past, maybe something that's not very relevant in our lives. So this is one thing that sometimes we come up with this justification, that the Quran isn't something we see something too much special in it when we open it and recite it. Sometimes we think about it, and one of the reasons that we justify for ourselves for not making more of the Quran is that we say that we don't know how to. We're told that the Quran is special, but how do I connect to it? I recite it often, even I might even be one of those people who recite it, but I just don't understand it. And then sometimes there's no justification for it. It's just that I can't be bothered. I've got so much on my own plate that the Quran, to make time for it, is something that would entail maybe putting aside my other priorities, which I can't afford to at this point in time. Maybe it's because I'm drowned in my work or in my studies and I don't have time for the Quran at this point. These are all reasons and excuses and justifications that we come up with. But each of them has an answer to it. Inshallah, what we want to try and do in the few minutes in this recording is we want to speak about what we can do to make sure that the Quran has a more prominent place in our lives. And one of the things that we need to do is mentally think about the importance of the Quran. So like we said, it's supposed to be our guide. It's Allah's words that are addressed to us. And when we think about this point, it's profound that the Quran is actually Allah's words addressed to us. If you imagine that there is somebody who you really, really badly want to meet, someone who you look up to, and one day you're finally given the opportunity to go and meet that person, how special would we value that time? How much effort would it take to make sure that every single word that that person says is either recorded in a video form or written down somewhere so that we can make use of it even later on? With the Quran, we have that in front of us. Allah is addressing us directly in the Quran. And just keeping this in mind and thinking about it can go a long way in making us use the Quran in the correct way and increasing that love and affection that we're supposed to be having with the Quran. The other thing we spoke about is that many times we complain that we don't know how to use the Quran. We recite it, but we're not able to make more use of it. We know that we're supposed to be able to take a lot more from the Quran than just this apparent recitation, and it doesn't seem to be making a change in my life. This can have a few reasons. Sometimes we recite the Quran, but we recite it very less. We don't recite it consistently. And the holy month of Ramadan is a beautiful opportunity for us to, and we do use this, as we said, to consistently recite the Quran. But what's more important is that after the month of Ramadan, we continue this, inshallah. The other thing is that when we recite the Quran, sometimes we recite it just apparently and quickly, especially in this month, without stopping to ponder and reflect upon its meanings. It doesn't take so much to sometimes pause, open the translation of the Quran, go through and see what the translation is saying, and take a few minutes just to ponder and think about the points that the Quran is speaking to us about. In this action in the Islamic terminology is called tadabbur. In the Arabic language is called tadabbur, pondering over the verses of the Quran. Tadabbur is a really beautiful concept. It's like you're investigating a crime scene. Imagine there's a crime scene that you as an authority have been tasked with going and investigating to find clues as to find out what exactly has happened. When you reach there, you find certain things are in certain places, certain things are not there where you feel like they should be there. You put all the pieces together and you come up with a final conclusion. In Tadabbur too, this is a similar thing that's happening. We come across verses of the Quran where certain words seem like they're highlighted more, they're repeated a few times in a few verses. These kind of places we stop and we ponder and we think, what is Allah trying to speak to me here about? Why is He repeating a certain concept so much? Why is this so important? Why has He not spoken about this other thing in this situation? Instead, He's decided to zoom on to and emphasize upon this point. One of the other things we can do is that after we do tadabbur, and if we still don't understand the meaning of a certain verse, we need to increase our relationship with the ulama, such that we're able to ask them if we don't understand. If we do not understand what the meaning of a certain verse is, it's very easy to then ask someone who does know. And finally, after we've understood the meanings of these verses, then we try to apply the lessons that we've learned in our own lives. Many a times, we may even come to this point where we do tadabbur of the verses. So we said that the first level is a person recites the verses of the Quran, but is unable to stop, comprehend, fathom them and understand them and ponder over them. The second level is where someone recites the verses, he stops, he ponders over the verses. But then the third level is then to go and apply these lessons in our lives. And arguably this is the most important aspect of the Quran, that a guide is not a guide if it doesn't take you to where you're supposed to reach. And so with these few points that we mentioned kept in mind, inshallah we're able to make use of the Quran in the best way possible and use this month to propel us and take us to a point where we're able to make more use of the Quran by reciting it, by understanding its verses, and by applying them in our lives. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.